Hi everyone, welcome back to my personal library. If you are new here, hi, hello, welcome. My name is Madi Kay, this is my big chair, and today we're talking about my January monthly wrap-up. So this month I was super excited. I was able to read 9 books total, which is perfect for me because that means I am on track to finishing my reading goal for the year, which is 100 books. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button below so that way you can get notifications for my new videos that are coming out. And if you make it to the end of this video, make sure to leave a little snowflake emoji in the comments. All right, let's get into it. Starting off first on our list, unfortunately, was a disappointing read for me, and that is Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. Now, this book was a bit of a shock for me because I'm usually a huge murder mystery girly. I love thriller books, I love murder mysteries, and this one was really disappointing. So Listen for the Lie follows our main character named Lucy, who lost her best friend named Savvy years ago, and everyone in her small town thinks that Lucy is the one who killed Savvy. Now, Savvy was like the golden child of their small town. Everyone loved her. She was super nice, super great. Lucy was like the mean girl rebel who got into trouble, like fistfights with boys at school, that kind of thing. So no one really liked her. Everyone already saw her as bad news. They're very quick to suspect her. And the police couldn't really find any evidence that really proved it, even though she had blood on her dress when they found her. And of course, Lucy has no memory of that night. So because of her amnesia, Lucy has no idea what happened. And then she moves away and just tries to forget about it. But upon returning home to visit her grandma because it's her birthday, she encounters this podcaster named Ben. Now, Ben is this true crime podcaster who's trying to investigate Savvy's murder and try to solve the crime. Now, for me personally, I don't mind the concept of like a true crime podcasters solving a murder, but the problem is after a while they're sitting there and thinking like, how inept are these policemen? They were like no police in this entire book. I'm pretty sure this town doesn't have police, to be perfectly honest with you. And Lucy, the main character, she's very unlikable in a way where it's very hard to root for her because the entire book you get the impression that she is completely remorseless when it comes to her friend and her friend's death. She does not grieve Savvy at all. Savvy is like haunting Lucy. Like she hallucinates Savvy, talking in her ear, telling her to kill people. The characters weren't really that fun to follow. Everyone is cheating and sleeping on everyone, which, please don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with casually dating, having casual hookups, dating people in your small town. There's nothing wrong with that. But this entire issue of infidelity, it's like, y'all need to get tested because this is gross. And you should probably get some paternity tests on those kids of yours. But also, it was crazy because Lucy's mom, who is a 6-year-old woman, confessed to dating someone Lucy's age, so someone who is 40 years younger than her, and everyone congratulates her and pats her on the back. I'm not a fan of huge age gap relationships. I'm 28 right now. I cannot imagine dating a 6-year-old man. I realized that when they were 40, you were a baby. Her ex was also an abusive jerk, and he just got away with so much terrible behavior, and no one called him out. It was just very frustrating to read. Everyone in this town just got on my nerves, and by the time I reached like the halfway point, I was just trying to get to the end. I rated this a 1.5 out of 5 stars because it was just a very disappointing read and a really bad start to 2025. And also, I do want to give you guys some content warnings if you're planning on reading this book for abuse, both physical and emotional, gaslighting, sexual assault, a lot of mention of killing people and some graphic details of the murders. Just keep that in mind if you're planning on going into this book. Okay, luckily for me, this book did bring me out of that unfortunate slump that Listen for the Lie put me into, and that is Wedding People by Alison Esbeck. And I'm going to start this review out by saying the content warnings first. I realized I should have done that before. So content warning for suicidal ideation, infidelity as well, death of a spouse, death of a sister, infertility as well, and I believe that's it. So Wedding People follows Phoebe, and Phoebe just went through a terrible divorce with her husband, who she found out was cheating with her work BFF. So he leaves her for the other woman. Phoebe is so distraught that she decides to fly to this super special, super expensive resort and end her own life. So the very beginning of the book, you have Phoebe grappling with this very hard decision. She realizes that she's the only person in this hotel that's not a part of the wedding, and she meets a bride-to-be named Lila. And Phoebe is at that low point in her life where she doesn't really care about what people think of her, so she lets Lila know that she's planning on ending her life, and Lila freaks out, not out of the goodness of her own heart, but because she doesn't want Phoebe to do it so that way it doesn't ruin her wedding, because it's like bad luck. or something. I actually really liked the interaction because it was very funny just how forthright Phoebe was being with it. I think it's like my sense of humor. If you don't like the gallows dark humor, then this probably isn't the book for you. But I will say that was probably my favorite part was when Lila was crying because this woman is about to end her own life and ruin her wedding, which is like, priorities, babe. There's more important things in your wedding. I don't want to give too much away, but essentially Phoebe comes to her senses and realizes that life is worth living, and she starts to have this fresh new perspective on life, and you see her transform a little bit. She becomes more comfortable with being open and honest with people. It was a pretty good book up to a certain point. Lila's character did get a little grating towards the end because she was such a big bridezilla. She was very selfish, very self-absorbed. I don't want to spoil anything, but there were some choices that the characters made and some things said that were just irredeemable in my eyes, but I would still recommend this. I think it was a really enjoyable book. But please keep those trigger warnings in mind. Overall, I would give The Wedding People a 2.5 out of 5 stars. Not bad, definitely better than Listen for the Lie. I think this book would have been better if Lila just wasn't such a raging bridezilla. Okay, so next up, we have probably one of the most surprisingly disappointing books of all. This book shocked me to my core. It was awful. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think this is probably one of the worst books I've read in a very long time, and it is the novella Spectacular by Stephanie Garber. Now, Spectacular is a novella that is attached to the Caraval series. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Caraval series, it's a very Alice in Wonderland-esque kind of book that takes place on the titular island named Caraval that is run by this fate or magical person named Legend. It's full of whimsy, full of magic, full of fun, and the series ended with the two sisters, so Scarlet and Donatella, the two main characters of the story. Scarlet is now the Empress of Caraval, and Donatella is like the princess. So they're both royalty now, and this book takes place during Christmas time. I have to say, going into this, thinking that it was going to be another cozy, fun little Christmas read, I got blindsided so badly. It was insane. I was so shocked. So this book is marketed to young adult girls. That's the demographic that's reading these books. Also, adult women by proxy. I'm not saying this to try to exclude men. People can read whatever they want, no matter what gender they are, but it's important to know who this book is targeting. Just to give you a better idea as to why this was so shocking to me was because this book went from being a cozy romance where Scarlet and Julian were being all lovey-dovey together and Donatella was trying to find a Christmas present for Legend. It sounds like a harmless book. It truly does. But what happens to her is so insane. So, trigger warnings for kidnapping, assault, sexual assault, coercion, and gaslighting. Donatella gets kidnapped and her captor starts feeling her up without her permission, obviously, because she has a boyfriend and this isn't her boyfriend. It was insane to me that this was happening in A Christmas Story, and she's blindfolded, she's gagged, she's bound, he's forcing himself on her. It was just alarming because this turned quickly into a dark romance. It was supposed to be a Christmas book, and it's just turning into this weird grape fantasy. It was so strange to me. I could not wrap my head around it. I hated the way the Stephanie Garber handled it because you know how easy it is to write a Christmas book? It's not that hard. I'm done with this series, honestly. If I could give this a -1 star, I would. I am traumatized after reading this book. Okay. I did have a moment of redemption, and that was when I read The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. So this book is a memoir following Kelly Bishop's career, going from being a ballet dancer as a young girl to becoming a chorus girl for the Rockettes to being a Broadway star where she won a Tony Award to becoming an actress where she went to work for Dirty Dancing and Gilmore Girls, and just also chronicling her life leading up to where she is now and talking about her dating affairs, her first marriage to a man with a gambling addiction, also content warning for gambling addiction, and then finally her marriage to Lee, who sadly passed away recently from cancer. But it was just very interesting reading her memoir because I did not know a lot about Kelly Bishop before I read this book. I did not know that she won a Tony Award, but a really cool fun fact about her is that she got a Tony Award the same night that Ed Herman, who played her husband, on Gilmore Girls also won his award. It was such a crazy coincidence. What a serendipitous moment to get the same award as your TV husband on the same night. It was really interesting to see her very humble beginnings. Her mom divorced her dad at a time where divorce was looked down upon, and she really fought to get her daughter to a point where she could be successful, which was amazing. I also did not know that Kelly Bishop is child-free either. I'm child-free, so solidarity. I really like learning about her life. It was really cool to see her have a really healthy relationship with a very supportive husband who really encouraged her to pursue her dreams. So I thought that was pretty cool. I really find her story to be very inspiring. Kelly Bishop is a very humble, very down-to-earth person. You really see that emanating through her book. I think this is definitely worth the read. But yeah, The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop, I would definitely give this a 4 out of 5 stars. But I would say content warning for abortion, gambling addiction, divorce, physical and verbal abuse as well. These are some heavy books, guys, I'm telling you. So the next book that I'm going to be talking about today is Chicago by Brian Doyle. Now, this is a book that was assigned to me by my book club. So I run a book club with some of my friends in town, and each of us get to pick out a book. So one of my friends chose this one. And even though I do tend to like memoirs, I just found this one to be a bit tedious. So Chicago is the author's journey and experience with Chicago. So it's definitely like a love letter to the city, which I really appreciate because I currently live in Chicago. So it's really fun to experience that alongside the author. But I hate to say this, it was boring and I was really rushed to read it. It just felt like homework. The only parts that really stood out to me were the parts where he was just talking about how amazing Chicago was. And I also was listening to the audiobook version, and the voice acting choices that the narrator made for some of the characters made them really annoying, and it was just hard to get through. It just wasn't for me. It was a very forgettable book. Chicago by Brian Doyle, 2 out of 5 stars, unfortunately. All right, moving right along. So this book is Rachel Hollis's latest book, What If the Answer Is You? So if you're not familiar with Rachel Hollis or the self-help community, you probably haven't heard of her, and I will have to say, you're not missing out on much. It really does not give me any joy to criticize someone's livelihood. Like, I never like telling people, especially as an aspiring author myself, that their book is bad. It brings me no joy. I do not like giving books 1 stars. This is Rachel Hollis's 4th self-help book, and each chapter is framed where there is a question to be answered. Even though I don't find this book to be one of Rachel Hollis's worst books ever, there were still a lot of very large red flags when it came to Rachel Hollis content. First of all, nothing that you read in this book is brand new. Everything in this book you've either heard before on her podcast, on her live podcast show, on her YouTube channel, and other books. Like, there's nothing new that this woman can possibly tell you that you haven't heard from a Pinterest vision board. She wants this book to help everyone, but the problem is everyone is not in the same situation. So she's making very vague claims and giving very vague tips on how to make our lives better. She doesn't really dive any deeper than the surface, and that's the problem with Rachel Hollis overall. She ignores big, glaring issues in our society that prevent people from succeeding in life in the way that she has. And the main reason for that is because she's not very truthful about how she rose to fame in the way that she has. This book, more than anything, proved to me that Rachel Hollis will never change. It was just very frustrating to read about this woman who is still missing the point, who still is lying to herself, lying to her fans, making the same mistakes over and over, pretending like it's like brand new. She was also pretty disrespectful of Dave, her late ex-husband, which I found to be relatively shocking. Majority of the book, she refers to him as, oh, my toxic ex. And I'm like, yeah, that's a red flag. That's not healthy, Rachel. And it sounds like you married a very similar person and you're just pretending like everything is fine. Yeah, if you're interested in learning more about my thoughts about this book, I will be coming out with a video where I do a more comprehensive deep dive into it. So let me know if you're interested in that. I will announce it relatively soon. Also, content warnings for physical, emotional abuse. Good Lord, you guys, what is with these books? I cannot catch a break with the abuse in these books. Very graphic descriptions of periods, very graphic descriptions of toilet humor, like peeing and pooping. It's gross. I'm sorry, you guys. I know it's not enjoyable. And then what else? I feel like there was something else I was missing. Oh yeah, miscarriage, cancer, and just the whole manifesting law of attraction. If that stuff makes you angry, I definitely would not recommend this book. Yeah, Rachel Hollis, What If You Were the Answer? I rated this a 1 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I read was The Idea of You by Robin Lee. Now, this book is another Harry Styles-inspired romance between a Harry Styles-like character, but this one's a little bit different because in this one, he's dating a woman that is significantly older than him. So this book follows Selene, divorced middle-aged mom who is taking her daughter to go see the One Direction-like band called August Moon. And as they're meeting them, she and Hayes hit it off. They're mutually attracted to each other. He asks her out to lunch. She takes him up on the offer. And the next thing they know, they fall head over heels in love for each other. And then once their relationship becomes public, it takes a very turbulent turn. I watched the movie before I read this book, and I will have to say, I think I enjoyed the movie a little bit better. I think that the movie did a lot better job of really capturing the complete insanity that comes with being famous in a relationship, especially when you have a bunch of teenage girls who are also crushing on the guy that you're dating. And it's going to get interesting. Like I mentioned before, I'm not a huge fan of the significant age gap relationships. And I also don't like it when half the book is just smut. There's nothing wrong with books like this. It just wasn't for me personally. I'm not the target audience for this book. I usually don't like books that are very heavily lean into the spicy, smutty scenes. I just skip through all of them. So yeah, The Idea of You by Robin Lee. I rated it 2 out of 5 stars. I recommend watching the movie. It was actually pretty enjoyable. Alrighty, so next up on our list, we have the most highly anticipated book of 2025, and that is Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. And I have to say, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Fourth Wing, I was actually pretty surprised that this book wasn't as bad as its predecessor, Iron Flame. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Fourth Wing, is this book about these people who ride dragons and they get superpowers, and they realize that even though they're at war with the Griffin riders, there is actually a much bigger threat on the horizon in the form of the Venin, which are like this series version of the White Walkers. And these things called the Venin, they also have their own dragons called the Wyvern, which are like two-legged dragons. In this book, Violet and Xaden and all their friends are back at Basgiath War College in Navarre, their little part of the continent. They're trying to put a task force together to go find Andarna's people. So Andarna is like the baby turned teenager dragon that Violet adopted in the first book. And Andarna, they find out, is the only one who can actually kill the Wyvern. Violet can also kill the Wyvern because, of course. But they're trying to find Andarna's people. So they go island hopping around the continent so that way they can try to gain an alliance with them to help them defeat the Wyvern and possibly find a cure, because Xaden is slowly turning into Venin, and Venin are like the White Walker zombie things in this universe. So they're looking for a cure. While they're doing that, there's some battles going on. They do some dragon fighting, and I don't want to give too much away, but I definitely will say that Rebecca Yarros' books are always much better towards the end. Unfortunately, to get to the actually interesting parts, you have to read like 500 pages worth of filler story, and I will say this book is no exception. The pacing is atrocious. Remember what I said earlier about the whole point of this book is that they're trying to find Andarna's people so that way they can convince them to fight on Navarre's side to defeat the Wyvern/Venin. That doesn't happen for 300 pages. And within these 300 pages, nothing freaking happens. Because the whole time they're arguing politics. Because no one wants to give Andarna and Violet what they want in order to form the task force. And then General Atos, who for some reason is the general now, even though he's very clearly a jerk and a terrible leader and is willing to torture students at the war college to get what he wants. So he's trying to make Violet's life difficult. And it's just a lot of back and forth, a lot of manufactured conflict. We find out that Violet has this ex that appears out of nowhere, and of course he's the prince. It's getting to a point where Rebecca Yarros is giving Violet too much plot armor, and Violet is turning into very much a Mary Sue character, and it's very obvious that she's a self-insert for Rebecca Yarros, so that's why Rebecca Yarros gives her all these special things, because she's living vicariously through Violet, right? She's a very flawed character who is very selfish as well, and she's doing all these terrible things, and her actions are excused because she's the main character, and Violet is always right and perfect, and anyone who criticizes her, questions her, is wrong. And none of the villains have any depth. They just are these like mustache twirling, cartoonishly evil villains. There's just a lot of useless characters and useless conflicts that really get in the way of the main point of the story. And this book could have been 200 pages and it just would have been better. There's just a lot of character mistakes, a lot of plot holes, which are just very distracting to me. There's also a lot of modern dialogue in this book. I'm going to stop the review right there because otherwise I would be talking about this for an hour. But if you're interested in hearing more about Onyx Storm and my personal opinion about it. I'll be coming out with a video very soon, so keep your eyes open for that. So yeah, Onyx Storm, 1.5 out of 5 stars. Definitely not the best fantasy book I've ever read, but at least it was better than Iron Flame. All right, last but not least, we have Everyone in This Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. So this book I've had in my TBR for a very long time, and like I mentioned before, I'm a huge mystery thriller fan, and this book follows the Cunninghams, and more specifically Ernie, our main character. So the Cunningham family is going to this family reunion at this hotel, and we learned that Ernie was the whistleblower on his brother, who he witnessed killing a man on the road. So his brother is finally getting out of prison, and he is with Ernie's ex-wife, and they get to the resort and they find out that there's been a death. So they're trying to solve this murder, try to figure out who actually killed this gentleman, who he represents, why he was there in the first place. And it's very interesting too, because each part you learn about Ernie's stepsister, Ernie's stepfather, Ernie's mother, Ernie's father. Everyone in his family has killed someone, and you learn who that is over the course of the book. I don't want to get into too many spoilers, but I definitely liked the twist at the end. I thought it was very interesting. I definitely recommend this book if you're a murder mystery person. I definitely think this is a good way to end January and to get ready for the month of February, which I'm really excited for. Everybody in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. 2.5 out of 5 stars. Content warnings for obviously murder, infidelity, and yeah. That's about it. All right, everyone, thank you so much for sticking around. I know it's crazy with the light coming in, the train going by. There's always something that gets in the way of filming, but that's just life. I had a lot of fun talking about these books. Let me know if there are any books that you would like to see their own videos about. Make sure to leave a comment down below. Leave a snowflake down in the comments if you stay to the end of the video. Let me know about what you read in January. And of course, have a great rest of your day and keep reading.